Hey, welcome back. This is Dr. Scott again. I wanted to give you some advice about how to do the abortion or human cloning argument that's coming up. And then there's also how to reply to the argument as well. I just wanted to say a little bit about that. The argument that's due Friday is worth 7 points out of the 100 total for the course. And then the evaluation of another person's argument is also worth 7 points. So they total up to 14. It's not a small assignment. It's actually a really hard assignment, and it may actually look a lot easier to do than it is. So I wanted to give you some advice about what to do. So I have on the board. I'm hoping you're able to see this, but this is the same thing that's in the assignment. You've got a 1, 2, 3 argument here with some blanks, and the first thing you're going to need to do, you're basically going to fill in the blanks for this assignment, and your 1, 2, 3 argument is going to represent your beliefs about abortion if you pick that topic, or about human cloning if you pick that topic. All right. So the first premise is, I think, the hardest part of the assignment, and you've got choices. So if you're going to say that abortion is morally acceptable, then right here you want to use the word acceptable, and so don't say wrong or obligatory. Or alternatively, if you're going to say that abortion's wrong, then use the word wrong. Or if you think that human cloning is obligatory, then use the word obligatory. But you need to pick which of those 3 words you're going to use. The next thing you want to do is to fill out the blanks. And when I'm grading your argument, there's 2 things that I'm looking for. One is you need to fill in the blanks so that it's general, meaning that it could apply not just to abortion if that's the topic you chose, but to other things too, or not just to human cloning if that's what you chose, but to other things too. Which means that when you fill in those blanks, you can't say words that are specific to abortion. So you can't say fetus or pregnancy or raped or any of those things. You need to put it in a more general way. Before the video is done, I'm going to give you an example of how someone might fill this out in a more general way. This is going to be hard because your temptation is to make it specific. For instance, it would be really tempting to say if a person's in a situation in which she's been raped, then it's morally acceptable for her to get an abortion. That is not general enough. It's too specific to abortion. So it needs to be worded more generally so that you can expand it and connect it to other ideas. Once you've figured out what you're going to put in the blank in the if part of number 1, then you put those exact same words in number 2 in the blank. Once you figure out which moral word you're going to use, acceptable, wrong, or obligatory, then in number 3 you use that exact same word. And once you figure out what you're going to put in the blank for the then part of number 1, then you'll use those same words in the then part, in number 3. You also have a choice in number 2 and 3 about the scope of it. So like maybe you don't want to say all abortions are right or all abortions are wrong or all human cloning's acceptable or all human cloning's wrong. Maybe you want to say most of the time it is, or in some cases it is. So you have a choice in 2 and 3 whether or not to say all, most, or some. So pick the word that corresponds with your beliefs. And whatever word you pick there, make sure that you use the same word in number 3. All right, so I want to show you give you an example of how someone might fill in the blanks here. This is a sample that I've given you with the assignment as well. This is an argument that's based on one of the readings by Judith Jarvis Thomson. I'm getting ready to fill in the blanks based on her ideas. For your 1, 2, 3 argument for the assignment that's due Friday, it needs to be an argument that's not from the Philosophy 400 handbook or from the assignment direction. So the one I'm going to give you is off limits. You can't use it for this assignment. But it's just a sample so that you can see how to fill in this thing. So I'm going to erase some stuff and then add it in based on Thompson's ideas. So Thompson thinks that abortion is morally acceptable in rape cases And she talks about a situation with a violinist, which is a pretty wild example. But basically, she says that it's acceptable to unplug yourself from the violinist because you were kidnapped in the night by the Society of Music Lovers. And so it's not your fault that you were kidnapped, so it's okay to leave. And so, based on those ideas, she might fill in the blanks saying, if a person's in a situation she is not responsible for being in. So there's a blank in the if part of number one. Then she's going to say it's morally acceptable to leave the situation. Now she's saying acceptable, so I'm gonna erase wrong and obligatory. So number one is general, as you can see, because it could apply to other things besides abortion. It could apply to like a party. What if you go to a party and it gets crazy and out of hand and it's not your fault that people are doing what they're doing at the party? Premise one would say because you're at a party you're not responsible for being in, it's acceptable for you to leave the party. So that's general. Next, she wants to say that in some abortion cases, in particular rape cases, it's going to be acceptable for a woman to have an abortion. So she's not saying all abortion, she's not saying most, she's saying some. Or because she specifies exactly which ones, and you can do that too, she would say in rape cases. So now because we're saying rape cases in number two, we're going to say the same thing here in number three. And now her premise, because it's an argument about abortion, is going to be about a mother. If it's a premise about human cloning, then it's going to be about experimenters. All right, so then we're going to use the word mother. And so what we want to do in number two is we want to here use the same words that we have here in number one. So in rape cases, a mother's in a situation, and in order to make it grammatical, I've got to put it like this. In a situation she is not responsible for being in. Therefore, in rape cases, we're almost done. Now again, we're using the word acceptable, so I'm going to erase these. It's morally acceptable to, and then again, we've got to use the same words there that we have in the then part of number one to, I'm sure at this point you can see where this is going, to leave the situation. Now, we can use specific words in 2 and 3. So you can say rape, and you can say mother, and even, and I did this with the sample, we can erase situation and say pregnancy. Well, acceptable to leave the pregnancy. All right, so here we have a filled out 1, 2, 3 argument. Again, yours is going to be different from this because it's going to be based on your ideas. But this is just a sample of how to do it for your assignment. So I think I forgot to mention the second thing that I'm looking at when I'm grading these. So the first thing that I'm looking at is I want to make sure that what you put in the blanks is general. It's got to be general so that it could apply to other things besides the topic you chose. This could apply to other things besides abortion. It could apply to parties. The other thing I'm looking at when I grade it is that you have consistency in the wording. So whatever you put in for the if part of number one, you've got the same words in number two. And whatever you put in the then part of number one, you've got the same words in number three. All right, so what you're going to submit on Moodle is simply 3 sentences. But it's harder than you might think to make these 3 sentences. And the thing that's really difficult is the first premise, because you're going to want to say specific words. But just keep asking yourself why you believe that until you come up with something general that you can fill in the blanks. And you can always make it longer. This one's relatively simple. All right, so for Friday, you're going to be turning in or submitting on Moodle your 1, 2, 3 argument. By Sunday, you need to find someone else's 1, 2, 3 argument that you're going to give an evaluation of. So you're going to reply to their argument. So you'll go on the forum, you hit reply, and you're going to insert an evaluation of their argument. And so in the Philosophy 400 handbook, there's a section on how to evaluate an argument. Please look at that, but I just want to emphasize a few things from that. When you evaluate an argument, you're either going to say it's a good argument or you're going to say it's not a good argument. Those are the only two options. If you're going to say that it's not good, then you need to say which premise number you disagree with, either number 1 or number 2, and then you need to give an example to explain your disagreement. So for instance, with this argument, someone might say, I don't think it's a good argument, I disagree with premise 1. Here's an example that's a problem for premise 1. Suppose that you come across a car accident that's not your fault, but there are people who are there who are injured. According to premise 1, because you're not responsible for the accident, it's morally acceptable for you to leave, but I don't think it's acceptable to leave. You should stay and help by calling or waiting for the ambulance or something like that. All right, so notice that in that evaluation, the person's saying it's not a good argument. They're saying which premise number they disagree with, and they're giving an example to explain their disagreement. Alternatively, you can say it's a good argument. And what you're supposed to do if you're saying it's a good argument is to defend the argument from an objection. So defending means you're replying to the objection that someone else might have to the argument. So you could say, I think this is a good argument. Someone else might object to premise 1 by saying that there might be a situation where it's not acceptable to leave. What if there's a party, or I should say, no, what if there's a car accident and there's someone hurt on the side of the road? Then according to premise 1, it's acceptable to leave the car accident, but the objector would say that it's actually wrong because you should stay and help. Then what you want to do after that is you would say, but I don't think that's a good objection, I disagree. And then maybe you would respond in some way. So you want to respond by explaining how the objector maybe misunderstood the argument, or maybe you would respond by explaining why you think it really is okay to leave the scene of the accident. But the key thing is that you've got to respond to the objection if you're saying it's a good argument. So what distinguishes the two options in the evaluation part is, one is if you're saying that it's a good argument, then you're going to explain how someone else might object, but you're also going to reply to the objection. On the other hand, if you're saying it's not a good argument, then you say which premise number you disagree with and you give your objection, and that's it. You don't have to give a reply. One thing that I've seen in the past that doesn't work if you're saying it's a good argument, I see this quite a bit, is I see people saying, I think it's a good argument, and then what they do is they give another example that supports it. That isn't really following the requirements for what you need to do if you think it's a good argument. So simply giving another example to explain a premise is not enough to, when you're saying it's a good argument. What you need to do is to defend the argument from an objection. And again, the format for that is to say, I think it's a good argument, someone might object, and then say which premise number they might criticize. Then you explain their perspective with an example, and then you give your reply to the objection. All right, so I just went through in this video, I just wanted to kind of show you visually here how to do this. These instructions are also on Moodle, built into the assignment, and then there's more information in the Philosophy 400 handbook. Again, it's harder than you might think, even though the evaluation is basically a paragraph, the argument is a 1, 2, 3 argument. There's just a lot to think about. So give yourself some time to think about it. If you've already posted your argument on there, but you want to change it now that you've seen this video, that's fine. You can go on there. You got till Friday to put the one up there that to add something if you wanted to add something. All right, that's it for now. Thank you. Good luck.